Everybody, all right with everybody, we'll start with a prayer. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Creator of all things, true source of light and wisdom, lofty origin of all being, graciously let a ray of your brilliance penetrate into the darkness of our understanding. Take from us the double darkness in which we have been born, and obscurity of both sin and ignorance. Give us sharp senses of understanding, retentive memories, and the ability to grasp things correctly and fundamentally. Grant us the talent of being exact in our explanations and the ability to express ourselves with thoroughness and charm. Point out the beginning, direct the progress, and help in completion through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Steve.
So one of the cool benefits of running a Catholic toy company is you get to pray at every meeting, and everybody really wants to do it. And you even get groups of people who argue about it. I want to do it, which is pretty cool because you don't get that in the Navy, certainly. So I always enjoy being able to pray at We Believers. So thanks everybody for a little bit of your time. Been a while since I started the company, and there's been a lot of learning, and I've really come a long way personally, I think, because of having started up a Catholic company and kind of the circuitous journey that it took. So I do have a little bit of a planned presentation, but I know I'll probably go off script a bit. So as John said, I was a naval officer out of college, had an electrical engineering degree, and then kind of got to the point where I knew that I wanted to have a family, and I didn't want to be traveling in the Navy and away from my kids for long periods of time, or I believed God was calling me to have kids. So got out of the Navy, worked for an ocean exploration company looking for shipwrecks. My boss actually was the operations director for finding the Titanic. So I got a pretty fun baptism by fire working for him. Realized I wasn't going to move up in the company because it was a small firm. And so I applied for my MBA and was engaged to my now wife. And we classed up, did 2 years from 2002 to 2004. Got to live just off campus. Awesome experience. Had a baby while we were there, and then moved here to Indianapolis and have been here ever since. After leaving Notre Dame, we did a lot of exploring and ideating and trying to be creative about things. Dabbled in some things, but my wife came out of church one day and said, "Did you see those kids in front of us? They were playing with fire trucks and eating Cheerios. Like, why don't we have something that engages kids in church?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe you can come up with something." So I want a mass kit. I want all the stuff on the mass, but you know, the chalice and a thurible and everything, but I want it plush. Go make that. Okay. I don't know anything about toys except buying them and having kids with them. I'd never run a business. I had no retail experience. I had no manufacturing experience. So, you know, I'm not sure it was the smartest thing to do, but I think it's what God put on our hearts to do. And it's interesting how our lives have unfolded as a result. So we now have 2 adopted kids, and I'm on the board of the Children's Bureau, which is the largest nonprofit in the state of Indiana providing foster and adoptive services. So, you know, I think that, and we have 5 biological children, so I have 7 total kids. And I think, you know, that theme really is kind of what my life's calling is to be a father and a husband, and then also to affect as many kids' lives as I can. So we made this mass kit. We started selling it to Catholic school teachers mostly, and then got some more ideas, made a few more products. And the first and second year were slow and just really trying to figure it out. The third year, we kind of thought we had under control. We launched a load of products and then started growing. And we really hit it off with the Louis, my little prayer buddy. So it's a Louis the Lamb, and it sings and prays. We have a bunch of different models, but the main one is the Catholic version, Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory Be. And I'd like to say that we knew what we were doing when that whole came together, but you know, some of it's the Holy Spirit, and some of it's the just natural creativity of my wife, who comes up with good ideas. But everything came together on that product, and it really hit the market, and it really impressed the market. And we started growing fast, really fast at that point. Blessing and, well, it was a blessing and a bit of a curse too, because looking back, I don't think I was fully prepared and and had fully put my company in a place to succeed on that. And so there were some speed bumps. And ultimately what that led to was me deciding that running the company day to day and continuing to try to grow it into something bigger and bigger wasn't what I'm called to do. So operating a toy company that does overseas manufacturing. So we make most of our products in China. We have one factory in the States, but the rest are in China. And importing them and containers and shipments and logistics and fulfillment and pick, pack, and ship and all that stuff, it's just not my passion. And so when I came to realize and explore my passion and understand what I really felt like God was calling me to do on a daily basis, I realized what I'd built at We Believers wasn't kind of my life's calling per se. I mean, We Believers was, but it was time to make a change. So I negotiated some deals to license the company to a guy I know who runs, well, there's two gentlemen. They both operate religious businesses. One's in all the Cactus Games, which is all the board games, and Bible to Bible, Apples to Apples, Cranium, and Bible Edition, and all those kinds of games. And the other guy does One to Believe, and he has a bunch of Bible toys as well. So putting our three sets of products together created a lot more efficiencies, especially in the sourcing and logistics, because China costs are going up, raw materials are going up, labor's going up, and that's not going to turn around anytime soon. So fortunately, this was all before the tariffs hit. And so that was a good strategic move, and it'll free me up to take a look back on my journey as an entrepreneur, what I'd learned, and who I felt like I was now. Kind of coincided with doing Exodus 90, the beginning of this year, and a Curcio towards the end of the Exodus 90. So I was doing Curcio and Exodus 90 at the same time. And that was kind of the culmination of a couple of years of a spiritual awakening, I'll say. And even though I was running a Catholic company, I think I was really in the grind, and I wasn't caring for myself spiritually, and I wasn't growing spiritually or in how I was running the business. I was becoming more aware, more sophisticated, but a lot came together for me in the last 12 months, 18 months, leading up to this transition for We Believers, from me operating the company to a license. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the license means these guys order, we give them the designs, but they order everything and warehouse them and do all the fulfillment. So we can still come up with product ideas. We can still, but they have their slate of designers who do all the final designs, and then they can go out the door. So that was a really creative solution to my desire to keep ideating products, and also to stop doing the things that God didn't make me uniquely qualified to do. And there were some exercises, Unique Ability 2.0, and some other things. And for anybody who's searching, you can just email me, and I'll share some specifics. But being creative about some exercises to explore what God gave me as abilities, and then what I was trying to learn as skills. I wasn't an expert. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm creative, and I learned through We Believers to let my creativity come out, and how to foster that creativity and put myself to be in a creative position. But it isn't creativity with graphic design. And so I could learn some skills to learn to draw, but I would suggest I would probably never quite be a good artist. And so learning that really helped me to say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to learn skills, and how can I leverage those? But what are my abilities? And let's focus in the area where God gave me my talents, God gave me my abilities, and to spend a lot more of my time doing that, and a lot less of my time trying to do things that I'm not cut out to do. I'm not cut out to run an operational manufacturing logistics company day to day. I did it for 10 years, but I wasn't great at it, and I'm not ever going to be great at it, and I don't think I'd ever be passionate about it. I am passionate about entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about coaching, and I hope my two coachees feel the same way. I am passionate about that, and I enjoy that. I enjoy learning and reading and being curious and writing and ideating and collecting information and forming it all together. And that's that creative side. And I enjoy technology and software. Not a programmer, right? So there's the creative side of software development and the connection with customers and asking customers about what's important to them. Closing that loop is where I'm great, but I wouldn't be a great coder. I know how to code. I have some skill in coding. You don't want me routinely coding for you. So that is, as in slightly under 10 minutes, kind of the overarching story of my journey in a kind of a big way. So I want to just pause for a second and see if there's any reactions or questions before I move on. Okay.
Actually, Steve, do you mind if I jump in with a question?
Please.
A lot of people's experiences are at the very beginning of that type of journey. And so you talked how there's some family discernment, and you just like, so I guess I have two lines of question. One is just, would love just a little bit more on how you discerned it as a family to make that level of commitment. And then also just any tips that you had actually for bringing first product out to market. And so that's, we got a lot of product companies too. So is there, if this is in the presentation you're about to walk us through, I'm happy to delay it, but I know, okay.
Good leading questions. I'm hoping to touch on maybe my lessons learned, and 20 minutes isn't a load of time. So I hope I can touch on it, and then maybe in the Q&A, if there's more question about some of the, I can go into that, but thank you. Those are great questions. And that's kind of where my heart is. So I'm glad you asked those.
Perfect. Thanks.
Hey, Steve, I applaud the humility of stepping back and realizing what you're doing maybe isn't what God called you for. And as I'm sure uneasy as that may have left you and your wife at times, again, I applaud that. That's awesome.
Thank you. It was a big thing, right? As I was kind of discerning my performance and where the brand and the mission of the company could best be achieved. It was hard because I wanted to walk away from it, this big, huge success, but I realized that was for my ego. And Exodus 90 was a big part of that for me. I know one of my mentees, Nancy, your husband, Bill, had gone through it at the same time. We didn't know each other then, but it's kind of cool to connect with people that you weren't in Exodus with and find people have similar experiences. It really helped me to uncork where my ego and my desire for success and outward success was holding me back from listening to what God wanted me to be doing and coming more to terms, I think, with what fulfillment for me really means. I mean, I think being a successful CEO of this big toy company, I don't think in the end I'd look back and be as gratified as I will be knowing I'm changing children's lives on the ground and sharing my experience with, and a lot of it's not successful. I mean, that's part of my presentation is about being comfortable with failure. I mean, I think that's just, if you want to be an entrepreneur, get comfortable fast. And the more you can embrace failure, the better off you're going to be as an entrepreneur. So, and I didn't make that up. That's a lesson learned from everybody I've read, all the good entrepreneurs, especially in the software business, which is really doing a good job of sharing in a really fast way, sharing their experiences in entrepreneurship because they can scale and do stuff so fast. They're actually producing blogs and, given social media and blogging, the amount of content that you can read about founders' experiences in the technology and software world is immense. And I've read more in the last couple of weeks than I'd learned in a couple of years of other people's experience and seeing how they coincided with mine. So, but thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, great point. As you were talking there, I was remembering one of my former employers, the mantra we had there was fail forward fast. And it wasn't just a saying. I mean, we were encouraged to do it and learn as much as we could from it. And it was a breakneck pace, but one of the most exciting places I've ever worked too.
Yeah, I totally resonated with that. I think you guys said that in your presentation, and that really resonated with me because that was not something I did at We Believers early, especially the first 5 years. I did not fail fast and forward. We were succeeding fast, and then when we hit the wall, it was because of some decisions we made that then was the opposite of that lesson, and I lived the opposite of it. So anybody else before I try to project this? Give me 1 second. Oh, I got it. There we go. Share and then play. Okay. Can everybody, I don't know what you guys can see. So do I have it right?
It's coming through.
See the presentation?
Yep. Looks good.
Okay. It's not overly presentation-y, but just kind of some guiding. So my magic word is dichotomy, a division or contrast between two things that are or are represented being opposed and entirely different. So I'm not sure that's the perfect word, but it's the only word I've come to. The best example I can say about this magic word and how it maybe summarizes where I am now versus where I was and in the beginning of my journey is being comfortable with dichotomy. But the real story, I think, of the word dichotomy is an active movement in the space between two mutually exclusive extremes, where both best contribute to action simultaneously and in the appropriate portions for the given moment. I made that up. I'm not sure it's not a fact. It's kind of the best way I can summarize what that word means in the context of my entrepreneurship journey. And the best example is chaos and order. Chaos on one side, order on the other. And I've come to learn you got to have both. Like chaos, and Jordan Peterson's the one who clarified this for me, at least the words chaos and order. But for me as an entrepreneur, it's like there's always creative chaos, which is good. And you're always seeking order. And you've got to move between those two things constantly. You can never have all order and you can never have all chaos because neither one works. And we'll talk about this more in the last slide. I'm going to wrap this formal part of the slide presentation up with some specific examples of it, but I'll jump through these next few slides. I kind of told my story, but We Believers is the story of what God wanted my wife and I to do. And when my wife in church, felt this call to build saints and to engage kids in church. And that was always the underlying theme. And that's one of my first messages to every entrepreneur is know your why, and Simon Sinek and all that, but it's not just talk. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you'll get pulled in a million directions and you won't have focus. And we were always about, at least in all the confusion we had over the years, there's one thing we always knew. We were always trying to empower parents and godparents and grandparents to give the gift of faith was one of the phrases we used. And when you have a phrase that you really own, you can understand, you can tell the story. If you're trying to give the gift of faith, you're giving gifts, so you're building physical products and you're passing faith on from generation to generation. Now, I will say that we didn't understand that well enough at the time and over the years, the journey, and I'll talk about that more. But we were about building saints, and that was one of the things we did really, really right is we understood all along that's what we were doing. I think the impact of We Believers isn't fully unveiled yet. So this transition to this license agreement, and I think there's a long way for the brand to go. I don't know what that'll be, and I think it'll be a long journey. But even if the brand were to disappear, I think lives have been touched by it that 20, 25 years from now, they're going to be vocations. And that is the legacy that I think no matter what the financial legacy is or the, how long does it last or the products or whatever, that's the why. That's the fulfillment of the why that made the journey and the pain and the difficulty and the challenges and the family pressure. And, China's open at night when we're asleep. So I had to be up at 10, 11 o'clock at night talking to China. And my wife and I were in the business together. So there wasn't a time when a We Believers subject might not come up. Those are hard things. Those are challenges. And I think Karina and Nancy and Bill and I, they're my coachees. That's one of the first things I talked about the first day is understanding, build a business that matches your life, you as individuals. Because if you don't do that, you will create problems down the road. So I love to focus on the lessons learned to the foundation that We Believers gave me and for where I think the rest of my life might be going. And I think Joe and I already kind of touched on, humility and learning from your mistakes. So I won't dwell on that. So the current state of affairs we've kind of already talked about. we went full circle. We went from one product that was strictly Catholic, and we really started making products that we were trying to reach the Protestant market, and then started reaching the secular gift market. So we had 3 main markets, and it got complicated, and it diluted our message. And in the end, at the end of the 10 years, we went from only Catholic back to pretty much only Catholic. So there's lessons to be learned in understanding who your customers are and nailing your customer segments before you try to expand. That's probably a mistake we made, but we circled back. So now it's a license. We're focused on building Catholic product, and it's a more simple message. How it came to be, I already talked about. It came at Mass. It was always about empowering parents to deliver faith to their kids. So I won't dwell on that slide as well, because we kind of touched on that in the beginning. A couple takeaways, and you'll get the presentation will be available, so write them down if you feel like, but don't worry about it. There's more, right? But I like to simplify things in a way that works for me, and take from this what you want. I mean, I'll suggest to everybody that, you'll hear you'll hear advice, and you'll read this book and you'll read that book. Take from each one what you need and build your own system. And I'll talk more about that later in the last page about dichotomies. But the 4 things that were uncorked for me in this 10-year journey, the first was people. I was always product focused. What's the product? The mass kit, the Louis the Lamb. I was always focused on the product, and that's not the way to do it. And I think Karina and Nancy will testify that I talk about that a lot, that you've got to focus on more than just the product. It's only one piece of the puzzle. And people is always going to be the biggest thing for me. And I've always led people. I mean, in the Navy and the submarine, I was an officer, so it was always about leading people who are smarter and more experienced than me, yet I'm in charge. So finding that pace for yourself as a leader, of getting yourself surrounded by superb high performers and empowering them and positioning them to get on board with your message. So you're the keeper of the message. You're the keeper of the why. You're the keeper of the mission and the values. And if you communicate those effectively, then your people can share them with your customers, and your sourcing partners will absorb them, and everybody you touch will absorb them, and things will stay cleaner. So people is a big one. Hey, product and market is important. There's no question that you've got to pick an addressable market. We can do all the metrics of total addressable market and market size, and my building product that fits and product market fit. And, that's a whole nother talk, but just understand that there's that section of product market fit being super important. At the bottom are the 2 things that are more about you as an entrepreneur, or me as an entrepreneur. One that I didn't embrace early, and really, really embraced, and the more I embraced it, the more efficient I got, was curiosity. I really have embraced learning, reading, and being curious about things, and taking a curious mindset into everything. Asking myself the question, how is that right? Not, is it right? It isn't, is it right or wrong? It's how or what about that particular subject is correct. Whether it's someone telling me something, whether it's something I'm learning, whether it's a conversation or conflict I'm having. If I'm curious about how the other side or the other opinion or whatever has some validity to it, I'm going to hopefully have a more open mind to get to the right answer. And the last one is one that I think is overemphasized in the venture capital world. In my opinion, is persistence. Listen, I think persistence is essential, absolutely essential, but it's in that, dichotomy word. It's not all about persistence. A lot of it is about knowing when not to persist, and when to shift, and when to be curious and accept movement. And I'm going to touch on these a little bit more, but these are kind of my 4 big buckets. Make sure you got the people part right. Make sure you've got a good product market fit. Be curious and be persistent. All right, my last slide, and then we'll break it open for questions. Some examples of how I think the word dichotomy encapsulates kind of the message I like to leave everybody with. You do have to balance between yourself and others, right? So you've got these people, and you've got the outside world, and you've got, but you have to take care of yourself. You need to exercise in a way that works for you. You need to sleep enough. I had plenty of times I didn't sleep enough and kept grinding, and that was just not the right answer. Be rested, be clear-headed, take care of yourself. Something I didn't do part of the time. And I think my performance and my sense of self suffered as a result. The more time I devote to prayer, the more clarity and success I'm finding. And it really took Exodus 90 for me to see that, which is really the end of my journey, but kind of wish I'd been exposed to something like that 10 years ago. But, you know, it's what it is. So balance between yourself, which is super important, and then an understanding of, hey, as Christians, we're called to serve others. So it's always about others, but we're still human beings with physical bodies that we have to care for. Balance between the internal, so your company, and the external, your customers, your market, and your competition. You've got to find that balance between making sure you're looking inward and running your business effectively and efficiently with clarity, and at the same time, you're not too inwardly focused. I was way too inwardly focused in years like 3, 4, and 5, and I missed what was going on in the greater Catholic market and the greater Protestant market and Amazon and the whole change that was going on post 2008. I was late to the game, and my company suffered because I didn't have time where I was focusing internally and of my week and time externally. Balancing between learning, curiosity, and persistently and consistently doing. I was always grinding. I was a grinder. I'm just going to grind and grind and grind and grind and grind. And again, you've got to have that, but you've also got to have learning and curiosity and openness. That one ties directly into the next one, is balance between testing, optionality, speed, and decisiveness, knowledge, and anchoring. You know, the software world is really great at teaching optionality and speed and testing. It's a build, measure, learn. You build something, you go measure it in 2 weeks, and you learn from it, you go back, you build again the next 2 weeks. And they go on these 2-week cycles, and some are 1 week, some are 5 weeks, but whatever. Build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. So you're always curious and asking questions. But at the same time, you as the founder have to have a clear understanding of what you are as a brand, and anchor in that, in your mission and your principles, and share those consistently. That's really tough for people to get, but it's really, in my opinion, really, really important. And then lastly, find your answers and assimilating what works for you. So there's this sense of, hey, I've got to apply all these things I'm learning and learn what works for you. But at the same time, don't think that your business is special in a way that it violates the natural laws of profit margin or gross profit, or, whatever your unit economics are. Know your numbers. There are plenty of years that I did not know my numbers in my business. And you make all kinds of bad decisions when you don't know your numbers. I get the feeling, OSV, from your presentation, it just struck me as these guys and these people know their numbers. They know what they're measuring. They know why they're measuring. Why did they pick those 3 or 4 numbers to run their business on? And they know those numbers all the time. And you can't have 20, 3, 4, 5. It's about as many as you can have. And they're probably unique to your business some degree, which numbers you're going to look at. But those natural laws of businesses and the target metrics for a manufacturing company, you want to get around 60-ish% gross margin or better. And if you start getting below, into the 50s, and if you're in the 40s, forget it. You can fool yourself for a little while, but if you're in 48% gross margins, and it's not going to work. Don't launch a product unless you know exactly where you're going from 48 back up to 60 or 62. So then there's some natural laws about how each business in each category, and obviously a digital business is different from a physical products business. Know the numbers for your business, know some benchmarks, and measure against them. So that's kind of me trying to encapsulate all this into kind of what's my story and what would I want to share in a short 20-minute time frame. I guess I'll open it up for questions.
All right, we got a comment from Joe. I'll read it off. I couldn't agree more with Steve regarding his point about curiosity. We've often said that beyond faith, of course, one of the most important attributes we look for in new hires is a strong sense of curiosity. Kyle does a terrific job of hiring people who want to learn and grow. He challenges us all to constantly be learning and reading. Yeah, I love that comment. And I'd be curious to hear from you, Steve, to extend the comment just a little bit in team building. I love that Kyle reference here. And how did you find, what tips do you have for forming your band of adventurers for this?
Unfortunately, I hate to say it probably took me till year 9 to get curious. And it was a personal, it was a personal journey. And the last 12 months when we were really creating new product, it infected my 2 other main, internal designers. We had a lot of freelancers, but the internal designers, we started ideating completely differently, and it just completely uncorked everything. And one of my regrets, right? Probably waited too many years to learn that lesson, but that's on God's time. I did my best. So, would it be different if I had been me now starting at 10 years ago? Well, sure. But, I've already discerned that that's not what I want to be doing anyway. So this is the journey God's got me on. But yeah, I can't extend that beyond. I think it's absolutely true. And I'm glad to hear successful people feel the same way.
All right, Paul Stewart asked a question. When you launched, what channels did you use to promote and move the sales needle?
Good question. And I was very raw back then, and probably still even more raw than I'd like to be as things were getting to the last 10 years. But it always specific to the market we were addressing. One thing we actually did well was we were careful to understand who we were marketing to and not going too far afield. So for us, when we launched my mask kit, it was educators. So we were putting ads in Catechist magazine, for example, and the ad people were saying, you're going to get this return or that return on an ad. We got 10x. Like we nailed it. Like our product and our market fit in the beginning, dumb luck or God's inspiration, I guess, the mask kit was a huge hit with that category. So that's why I love what the software world's doing, because we got away from that, because got to the point where we were marketing, we were going to Protestant trade shows, we were going to Catholic trade shows, we were going to the gift show down in Atlanta, which is like, $25,000 a show to go, and hotels and everything. I mean, we were putting big money in, and I think you've got to be really careful, especially early. It's really about understanding your product market fit and how you're going to talk to customers. So it's different for everybody. There's no silver bullet. The key for you is to be curious in your industry and be creative in how you're going to acquire your customers. What's your customer, and that's back to the natural laws. What are your customer acquisition costs? If you don't know your customer acquisition costs, don't do it. Like if you don't know what it's going to cost for you to acquire a customer, have some feel for how many customers you're going to get with an endeavor, don't do it. I was so green. I got ads thrown at me all the time, and we kind of just felt like we had to do it because we didn't know what else to do. I can't more strongly suggest don't do that. Conserve cash, be strategic, get advice if you have to. Don't just take an advertising opportunity because it's an opportunity. Take it because it's the right answer for your company, and you have some thought about how you're going to turn that into how many customers you're going to get at what cost, and how does that going to feed into your margins. Because if you don't, you're just shooting darts. Now, that doesn't mean you can't test. That doesn't mean you can't run tests. But what's pretty prevalent now that I didn't know anything about 10 years ago is you can test things in all kinds of creative ways that don't cost much money. You can create a digital ad, pay for 20 or 30 or 40 bucks or $100 on Facebook or on Google ads, and run a quick test and put it out there, put your message out there, create a fake landing page and see how many clicks you get. There are ways for you to test your message, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and to learn quickly with very small amounts of money, rather than spending, $5,000 on a print ad at a trade show publication and having no idea what my return on the investment was going to be. I mean, looking back, that was so foolish. I'm not saying print advertising doesn't work, and I'm sure OSV can speak specifically to what it works, because they probably know, they probably have a feel for whatever they're going to do. They have a good feel for what the return on that investment is going to be, and whether they're going to go no go. And then are they able to test results they get from it. Because if you run ads or any other kind of marketing campaign and you can't measure how it's performing, that's another big problem and another rookie mistake that I made in the beginning. If you don't put a code or some way of tracking the performance of the marketing effort, be really, really cautious of it. Because if you can't measure it, how do you know how it's doing for you? So I'm really passionate about those kinds of things and getting those things right. And if you need help, ask for it. What's cool about this digital world at the Idea Center is you've got access to a lot of people. Take them. Don't be afraid to ask. Those of us who have failed a lot love to share. It's what I've heard. Everybody talking. Everybody's passionate about sharing and helping. So ask whatever questions of whoever your network is. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. I can imagine that with some of the questions, so JM has asked two more, and he's asking some more detailed questions on marketing channel, and then a team management one. But I can see a need for this group, and as this continues, there's a book out there called the Startup Owner's Manual that just says basic tactics that you can do in different areas. And I can imagine the Catholic Startup Owner's Manual that doesn't just say go after earned media, but it says go after this newspaper or this set of things. So Steve, I don't know if you have more comments, if you want to get a little tactical on the channels, but we could also take that offline if you feel that's more detailed, but I know there's detailed need here. And then there's more of a discussion item that's dealing with how do you get your team or your employees to adopt your why. You choose which of those to tackle right now.
Well, let's start with the Christian Catholic thing, and I'm going to go Protestant Catholic thing because that is $1 million question, and we could almost have a whole hour just on that. I think the whole market choice question is so important as a founder that you know who you're going after. I will share with you, and I think I shared this with Karina and Nancy both, that you've got to nail your initial market first. We didn't nail the Catholic market. We found success in the Catholic market and then thought, oh, look, there's this Protestant market and there's the gift market and there's, what do you call them? The secular gift stores, the Hallmark stores, there's all these hallmarks. So our eyes were popping open with success and opportunity. And so we went after all these opportunities. But what it did was dilute our efforts and our understanding of how to communicate. And it caused us to create new products that were confusing. Well, we had a fruits of the Spirit product. So there's 9 fruit of the Spirit in the Protestant English Bible, right? But the Catechism of the Catholic Church has 12 fruits because the original language, there were 9 words, but those 9 words don't translate out of Hebrew and Greek, and they don't translate into 9 English words. The Catholic Church translates them into 12. So we'll make 2 versions. We have a 9 version and a 12 version. Listen, bad idea, right? Because you're just diluting yourself. You're cannibalizing your own product. It's confusing. People want the 9, they get the 12. Amazon delivers the 12 instead of the 9. No. Nail your market. If you can nail the market and your product will sell to a secondary and tertiary market, great. But if you can't own your primary market with your primary marketing message and your product, you're not ready to move on yet. I had so much runway with the Catholic market, and it was a mistake because I started diluting myself into the Protestant market, and they were picking up my product really fast, and then they had a lot of product suggestions. So we started making more product for the Protestant market, and then we had a miss, and then our earnings took a hit, a big hit, because we shifted away from what should have been our primary focus too early, okay? So my advice to people there is I'm really passionate. If you're Catholic, there's a lot of runway in the Catholic market. And the Catholic market and the non-Catholic market are very different. The Protestant market is it's marketing driven. And the Catholic market is very grassroots and trust driven. Now the Protestant market is trust driven. I'm not saying it's not. I'm talking about primarily. And so make sure, and if anybody wants to talk more about this, I'm happy to talk more about it at some point because there's a lot there, I think, about if you're Catholic, just go get the Catholic market. you can go ahead and do some secondary marketing, but make sure that your mission and your why are very clear about who you're at and what your goal is for a company and for a brand. And I like the word brand because company is a structure. In the brand is who you are spiritually. And I was late to the game, probably year 5 or 6 before we were actually rebranding, when I kind of really became aware that the word marketing is a function, right? A marketing function. I have a chief marketing officer. It's advertising, it's public relations, it's communications, it's, it's sales usually fits under marketing. Sometimes those are structural words. When we talk about brand, we're talking about what you are as a value proposition. What are you delivering to customers? And how does your why and who you are as a founder all mix together to be presented to your customer? And there are functions underneath that, but there are spiritual elements as well. And that's why the word brand to me is a better word. It includes an important component of marketing, how people perceive you as a company. But it's more than that. And it's your guiding light internally and externally. So focus on brand and understand your branding, because those things are really, really important. So that, and it speaks to the other question, right? Is how do you communicate with your employees and your partners to adopt your why? If you don't really know your why, forget it. And I'm going to tell you how hard it is to really nail your why. It's not easy. And you got to get it down to a small number of words. I know I'm having my mentees do a what if statement. What if grandparents and godparents could gift products to their beloved young children that would grow their faith? There's a what if for we believers. And if you really understand your what if, your whole company and everything about you is summarized in one sentence. And if you can't, think about it more, pray about it more. So nail that Catholic market if that's your market. Figure out what it means to have a secondary market and how you're going to allocate resources in your messaging to that secondary market. But it can never hurt your primary market, because if it does, you need to rethink your strategy. I could go on and on about it. I think it's a hugely important subject, but I don't know if that's enough.
Great. I see other comments in here. If I'm missing another person's question, just jump in. Just go on off mute.
I was reading about BarkBox and Pastoral Parish. Yeah, I'll say distraction is the king. Just to kind of wrap up, my suggestion, everybody, is to pick 3 rocks you're going to work on every quarter. Pick 3 big things that you can accomplish in a quarter and focus on those. So operate your business. So it's just the minimum it takes for you to operate your business. And then give yourself 3 goals you're going to reach within 90 days and do whatever it takes to stay on track to accomplish those goals in the 90 days. And then the next 90 days, you set 3 to 5 more. And then next you say 3 to 5 more. Each of those goals should be reaching a 1 year, a 5 year, or 1 year, a 3 year, and a 10-year goal. And if you don't have a vision for where you'd like to be in 3 years, make one. And if you don't think you can have one, you're wrong. You've got to figure out where you're going. And it's general, but you have to take that general goal in 3 years and break it down into 1 year. What am I going to do in year 1, year 2, and year 3? And then what am I going to do in 90 days to accomplish that? And focus on those things. Track those every day. Make sure you're spending a certain percentage of your time daily and weekly on those big initiatives to move your business forward in 90 days. Because otherwise, the unplanned work and the things that pop up or just the busy work will keep you from reaching a real trajectory in growth. So think about, if I looked back in 90 days, what did I accomplish? And you'd be surprised if you look back in 90 days and you're like, wow, I didn't really accomplish much. But when you have this solid 3-month goal of 3 to 5 things that you're going to accomplish, and you track them every day and you do them, and you fit them in and make sure that you're not getting sucked up by busy work, your business will take incremental steps forward that after you look and say, I accomplished more this year than their past 3 years combined. I'm a big believer in setting those we call them rocks. So
yeah, I'd echo that too. I find that the goal setting also helps with reflection. So what didn't work is often as interesting as to whether or not you hit it, and that's where a lot of learning comes from.
yeah, just real quick, that imagine a glass jar. I got a huge glass jar, and I've got a pile of rocks, and which is big goals, and I've got gravel, which is kind of smaller projects but important ones, and I've got sand, which is lots of busy things, but they're really important. And I have water, which is the baloney that happens every day, all the unplanned distractions and getting coffee and going to the bathroom. And if you fill your jar with water first, there's no room for anything else. But if you put your rocks in the jar first, then you can take the gravel and pour it in and fill in all the spaces. Then you can take the sand and fill in all those spaces. And then you can pour the water in, which will fill every other space. And now you've maximized the important things that you're getting done with the same amount of time. And I had both my mentees do a time budget, and it was to say, what time is available for you to work on your business? You're moms, you're busy, you have kids to raise, you have houses to run. What's available? Allocate the time you have available. Don't allocate a week. You don't have a week. You have a certain number of hours every day that you can actually work on your business. Whatever it is, if it's 2 hours, is it 8 hours, or is it 16? But if you allocate that time and you manage your rocks to that first, and then make sure the other work's getting done in between, you'll move your business forward. But if you do all the busy work first, a week will go by and you'll have none of your rocks done. Yeah, and Joe's pointing out book scaling up. Yeah, there's another book called Traction, which kind of, he uses that same methodology. So there's lots of ways. Just pick something, make sure you put a simple system together that you'll do, and then do your system. Do your system, be systematic, whatever it is, make it simple, make it work for you, and do it. And a mentor is great help for that. If you need a mentor and you need accountability, make sure you leverage your mentors and your accountability networks. So.
Wonderful, Steve. Thank you. It's another great one. And we'll again be putting these up on the YouTube channel. For those of you who haven't subscribed to it, YouTube channel is now the one-stop shop. So if you just subscribe to it, then you'll get all the notices when there's new content up here. We're trying to get on a 24-hour cycle, but it might be 1 to 2 days before we can get uploaded. So unless anyone else has any thoughts, then I think we'll close out and give you all a few extra minutes back.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Steve. This is great.